In the shadow of Riverside Sanatorium, a divorced mother was about to face an entire town's judgment. What started as a desperate move into an abandoned hospital took a shocking turn when she discovered hidden clues to a $246 million fortune. Tere Clarkson wasn't your typical homeless mother. For 13 years, she had been a promising architectural historian, known for reading secrets in old buildings. When she encountered unusual patterns in the sanatorium's walls, she had no idea she was walking into a mystery involving Nazi-looted gold and a refugee doctor's tragic legacy that would change everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The U-Haul's brakes squealed as Tere Clarkson pulled into the gravel driveway, the sound echoing off the Gothic Victorian structure that loomed before them. Riverside Sanatorium, her new home. The thought sat in her chest like a stone. 3 weeks. It had been 3 weeks since the divorce was finalized, since Richard's lawyer had slid those papers across the polished mahogany table, since she'd signed away 13 years of her life for practically nothing. The prenuptial agreement she'd signed at 25, young, naive, and stupidly in love, had seen to that. "I'm not getting out." Mia's voice came from the passenger seat, flat and final. Tere's hands remained on the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Through the windshield, the sanatorium watched them with hollow eyes. Broken windows that hadn't seen glass in decades. Ivy crawled up crumbling brick walls like grasping fingers. The November afternoon had turned the sky the color of old bruises. "Mia," I said, "I'm not getting out." Her 14-year-old daughter stared straight ahead, her jaw set in that stubborn line that reminded Tere too much of Richard. "This is insane. You're insane for bringing us here." In the back seat, 9-year-old Ollie had his face pressed against the window, his breath fogging the glass. "It looks like a castle," he whispered, wonder threading through his voice. "A haunted castle." "It's not a castle, stupid. It's a dump." Mia's voice cracked. "It's where people came to die." Tere closed her eyes. Her daughter wasn't wrong. Riverside Sanatorium had been a tuberculosis hospital, closed since 1962 when antibiotics had made such places obsolete. The building had stood empty for over 60 years, slowly rotting into the landscape. And now it was theirs. Hers. The one property Richard's firm had failed to acquire, transferred to her name in the divorce as a final insult disguised as generosity. "We don't have a choice," Tere said quietly. "We could stay with Dad." Mia turned to face her, and Tere saw tears tracking down her daughter's face. "He has that huge house. Bethany wouldn't care. We could just—" "No." The word came out harder than Tere intended. She softened her voice. "Mia, honey, your father made his choice. He has his new life. We need to build ours. In a condemned building." Mia's laugh was bitter, too old for 14. "That's what you call building a life?" Across the street, Tere noticed movement. Neighbors standing on their porches, watching, whispering. She recognized that look. Judgment wrapped in curiosity. The divorced woman who'd fallen so far she'd moved her children into an abandoned hospital. By tomorrow, everyone in this small town would know their business. "I'm going exploring," Ollie announced, already unbuckling his seatbelt. "Ollie, wait." But he was gone, door slamming, sneakers crunching on gravel as he raced toward the building's main entrance. The front door hung crooked on its hinges, creating a gap just wide enough for a small boy to squeeze through. "Ollie!" Tere fumbled with her own seatbelt, panic rising in her throat. The building wasn't safe. She'd only seen it once, during a brief inspection with Richard's lawyer, who'd smirked the entire time as he handed her the keys. "Third floor's completely unsound," he'd said. "Basement floods. Electrical systems a fire hazard. But hey, it's all yours." She stumbled out of the truck, her legs stiff from the 3-hour drive. Behind her, she heard Mia's door finally open. "If I die of tetanus, it's your fault," Mia muttered, following. The November air bit through Tere's thin jacket. She'd sold most of her nice clothes, the designer pieces Richard had insisted she wear to company functions. Everything had to go to pay the lawyer to cover the deposit on this place to buy groceries. They were down to $347. She knew the exact amount because she'd counted it this morning twice. "Ollie!" Her voice echoed off the sanatorium's walls as she approached the entrance. Up close, the building was even more imposing. Victorian architecture, she noted automatically, her old training surfacing despite her fear. Built in stages, the original structure probably 1890s with additions from the 1920s. The decorative stonework around the entrance showed craftsmanship from an era when such details mattered. She squeezed through the gap in the door, Mia close behind. The interior smelled of mold and decay and something else, the particular staleness of a place where air hadn't circulated freely in decades. Tere's eyes adjusted to the dimness. They were standing in what had once been a grand lobby. A reception desk sat abandoned in the corner, its wood warped and water-damaged. The floor was a checkerboard of black and white tiles, many cracked or missing entirely. "Mom! Mom! Come see!" Ollie's voice echoed from somewhere deeper in the building. "Ollie! Get back here right now!" Tere's heart hammered. She pulled out her phone, turning on its flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, revealing peeling wallpaper and ceiling stains where rain had leaked through the roof. She found him at the end of a long corridor, standing in front of a staircase. The boy was grinning, completely unafraid. "Look how big it is. We could explore for weeks. It's like a death trap," Mia finished, appearing beside Tere. But even her daughter's voice had lost some of its edge. Curiosity had begun to replace anger. "Seriously, Ollie, you can't just run off. What if you fell through the floor?" Ollie's grin faded. "Oh, I didn't think of that. That's because you're 9 and your brain hasn't developed yet," Mia said, but she reached out and ruffled his hair. "Come on, let's help Mom unload before it gets dark." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of carrying boxes and sleeping bags from the truck. Tere had done a preliminary survey, finding one room on the ground floor that seemed relatively intact, the former administrative office. It had a door that closed, windows that still held glass, and a floor that didn't feel spongy with rot. It would have to be enough. "There's no running water in the bathroom," Mia reported, her voice tight. "I know." Tere was testing light switches. Half didn't work. The ones that did produced dim, flickering bulbs that cast more shadows than illumination. "I'll call a plumber tomorrow." "With what money?" Tere didn't answer. She couldn't. As the November sun set, they huddled in the administrative office with the door closed against the rest of the building's vast emptiness. Tere had set up a camping stove and made ramen noodles. They ate in silence, sitting on their sleeping bags. "I saw a woman watching us," Ollie said, slurping noodles. "From across the street." She kept staring. "Everyone's staring," Mia said bitterly. "We're the freaks who moved into the haunted hospital." "Language, Mia." "What? I didn't even swear." Tere's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Richard." "Don't answer it," Mia said, watching her mother's face. But Tere answered. Old habits died hard. "Teresa." Richard always used her full name, the one she'd stopped using years ago. "I hope you've reconsidered this ridiculous stunt." "It's not a stunt, Richard. It's where we're living." "You're living in a condemned building with my children." His voice was smooth, controlled. The voice he used when he wanted to sound reasonable while saying unreasonable things. "Do you understand how this looks? How this reflects on me?" There it was. Not concern for the children. Concern for his image. "The building isn't condemned," Tere said quietly, aware of Mia and Ollie listening. "It needs work, but it's legal to occupy." "Legal and safe are two different things, Teresa. My lawyer will be filing a motion for emergency custody. I'm giving you 1 week to come to your senses and find appropriate housing, or I'll have no choice but to." "Appropriate housing requires money, Richard. You made sure I didn't have any." "That's not fair. The prenup was signed in good faith. You agreed to the terms." Tere closed her eyes. She'd learned over 13 years that arguing with Richard was like arguing with the tide. It didn't matter if you were right. The wave would still knock you down. "I have to go," she said. 1 week, Teresa. Don't make me do this. He hung up. Tere sat there, phone in hand, feeling the weight of her daughter's gaze. He's going to try to take us away, isn't he? Mia asked. He's going to try. Tere looked at her daughter, then at Ollie. But I won't let him. I promise you, I will not let that happen. Mia studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay. They settled into their sleeping bags as darkness pressed against the windows. Tere had brought a battery-powered lantern, and its soft glow pushed back the worst of the shadows. But it also made the room feel smaller, more isolated. Beyond their door, the sanatorium stretched out in darkness. Corridors and rooms and staircases leading to places she hadn't dared explore yet. Mom! Ollie's voice was small in the darkness. Are there really ghosts here? No, baby. No ghosts. But people died here. Lots of people. Tere reached across the space between their sleeping bags and found his hand. People died here, yes, but they also got better. This was a place of healing once. Try to remember that. She heard him shift, settling into sleep. Mia remained silent, facing away, but Tere could tell from her breathing that she was still awake. The neighbor, Mrs. Hendricks, she'd introduced herself as, had appeared just before sunset. A woman in her 70s with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. You planning to stay here with those children? She demanded, standing at the sanatorium's entrance like she had authority to question. Yes, ma'am. That's child endangerment. I'm calling social services. Tere had faced her down, channeling a strength she didn't feel. This building is legally habitable. I have documentation, but please make your call. They'll find 2 children who are fed, clothed, and loved. That's more than a lot of kids have. Mrs. Hendricks had huffed away, but the threat lingered. Now, lying in the darkness, Tere allowed herself exactly 1 hour. 1 hour to feel everything. The humiliation of her circumstances, the fear of losing her children, the crushing weight of having failed at the life she'd built. 1 hour to cry silently into her sleeping bag while Mia and Ollie slept nearby. And then, as midnight approached, she wiped her face and sat up. The lantern had dimmed, running low on battery. In its fading light, Tere studied the room that would be their home. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, peeling in strips. But underneath, she could see original plaster work. Crown molding ran along the ceiling, Victorian detail work, intricate and beautiful despite its decay. Her eyes traced the pattern of the molding above the doorframe. She'd studied architectural history once, knew the common motifs of the period. Acanthus leaves, Eggendart patterns, Greek key designs. But this pattern was different, more geometric, almost mathematical. Tere stood, moving closer. The lantern's dying light barely reached the ceiling, but she could make out enough to see that the pattern didn't match the rest of the building's Victorian aesthetic. It was too precise, too deliberately complex. She pulled out her phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the molding. The pattern repeated in sections, but with variations. Like a code, like a message. Her architectural historian's mind woke up fully for the first time in 13 years, curiosity replacing despair. This building had been closed for 60 years. But someone had left something behind, something hidden in plain sight. Tere stood there in the darkness, studying the unusual molding, and felt something shift inside her. Maybe they'd come to this place to survive. But maybe, just maybe, there was more to discover than she'd imagined. She settled back into her sleeping bag, but sleep didn't come easily. Her mind kept returning to that pattern, to the feeling that this building held secrets. And as exhaustion finally pulled her under, her last thought was both a question and a promise. What are you hiding? The sanatorium kept its silence. But Tere Clarkson had spent 13 years being quiet, being compliant, being what everyone else needed her to be. That woman was gone, dissolved in divorce papers and broken promises. The woman who remained was ready to dig. The morning sun barely penetrated the grime-covered windows when Tere woke to the sound of a car door slamming. She'd slept fitfully, her dreams filled with geometric patterns and whispered warnings. Mia and Ollie were still asleep in their sleeping bags, their faces peaceful in the early light. Tere pulled herself up, her back aching from the hard floor. Through the window, she watched a sleek black Mercedes pull up to the sanatorium's entrance. A woman emerged, 50s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal pantsuit that probably cost more than Tere's monthly budget. Her heels clicked with purpose across the gravel. Tere met her at the door before she could knock. Ms. Clarkson. The woman extended a manicured hand. Denise Park, Park Development Corporation. Tere recognized the name. Richard had mentioned her company before. Aggressive developers who'd been trying to acquire the sanatorium for years. She shook the offered hand, aware of how she must look in yesterday's clothes, her hair uncombed. I know why you're here, Tere said. The answer is no. Denise's smile was professional, practiced. You haven't heard my offer yet. I don't need to. This property isn't for sale. Ms. Clarkson, please. 5 minutes of your time. Denise glanced past her into the dark interior. We could talk outside. The fresh air might be preferable. The implied insult hung between them. Tere stepped outside, closing the door behind her. She wouldn't let this woman see how they were living. I'm prepared to offer you $80,000, Denise said, pulling a folder from her briefcase. Cash. Immediate closing. You could find a proper home for your children. Get back on your feet. $80,000. It was more money than Tere had seen in months. Enough to rent a decent apartment, buy furniture, maybe even start over somewhere new. She thought of Mia's tear-stained face, of Ollie's brave attempts to pretend everything was an adventure. The building isn't safe, Denise continued, her voice softening slightly. I've had structural engineers assess it. The eastern wing could collapse. The wiring is a fire hazard. You're putting your children at risk. You're concerned about my children? Tere heard the edge in her own voice. Or concerned that I'm blocking your luxury condo development? Denise had the grace to look uncomfortable. Both can be true. Look, I'm a businesswoman. I won't pretend otherwise. But I'm also a mother. What you're doing here, it's not sustainable. Before Tere could respond, another vehicle approached. A battered Toyota, its paint faded from years in the sun. An elderly man in priest's clothing emerged, carrying 2 canvas grocery bags. Tere Clarkson? His voice was gentle, his accent carrying hints of Spanish roots. I'm Father Gabriel Torres from St. Mary's Church. I heard you'd moved in and thought you might need some supplies. Tere felt something catch in her throat. After Denise's clinical assessment, this simple kindness nearly undid her. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That's very kind, but no buts. Consider it a welcome to the neighborhood. Father Gabriel set the bags down, his dark eyes warm with understanding. I knew this building in its final days. I was a young seminarian then, volunteering with the patients. It was a place of healing once. Can be again. Denise cleared her throat. Father, surely you can't condone a woman living here with children. The building is what she makes of it. Father Gabriel's tone remained gentle, but there was steel underneath. I've seen worse places harbor more hope. He turned to Tere. My offer stands whenever you need it. The church is always open. After he left, Denise made one more attempt. Ms. Clarkson, please, think about what's best for your family. I am, Tere said quietly. And right now, what's best is keeping the one thing Richard couldn't take from me. Denise studied her for a long moment, then nodded. I respect that, but when you change your mind and you will, my number's in the folder. The offer won't last forever. She drove away, leaving Tere alone with the grocery bags and her thoughts. Inside, she found bread, milk, eggs, fresh fruit, simple staples that felt like treasures. At the bottom, a handwritten note. God sees your strength. Father G. The rest of the day was consumed with logistics. Tere spent 3 hours at the local school district office, enrolling Mia and Ollie. The administrator's expression had grown increasingly dubious as Tere provided the sanatorium's address. "Is this a permanent residence?" the woman had asked. "Yes. And you have running water? Electricity?" "We're working on the water situation." The woman's lips had pressed into a thin line, but she'd processed the paperwork. Tere knew what she was thinking, knew the phone call to child services was probably already being made. By the time she picked up the kids from their first day, Tere's anxiety had crystallized into dread. Ali bounded out, chattering about a boy named Danny whose grandmother had worked at the sanatorium 1,000,000 years ago. But Mia emerged with torn clothes and a split lip. What happened? Tere's hands shook as she examined her daughter's face. Girls at lunch thought it was funny. The girl whose mom lives in the death hospital. Mia's voice was flat, emotionless. "I corrected their assumptions." "Mia, just don't." Mia climbed into the truck, slamming the door. The real blow came at pickup, when Richard's lawyer materialized from the crowd of parents. He was young, expensive-looking, his smile sharp as broken glass. "Tere Clarkson?" He spoke loudly, ensuring everyone could hear. "You've been served." The envelope felt heavy in Tere's hands. Around her, other parents whispered, their children staring. Mia's face had gone pale. Ali pressed against Tere's side. "Emergency custody hearing," the lawyer continued. 3 weeks. I'd suggest you find better accommodations before then. Judge Harrison doesn't look kindly on parents who endanger their children." He walked away, leaving Tere standing there with the papers clutched in her trembling hands, surrounded by judgmental stares. That evening, while searching for the fuse box in the basement with a flashlight, Tere found it. Behind a panel of rotted wood, water-damaged but unmistakable architectural plans. Not the official blueprints filed with the county, but hand-drawn schematics showing rooms and corridors that didn't exist in the building she knew. Her heart began to race. She'd seen enough historical documents to recognize the age of the paper, the style of drafting. These plans were original to the building's construction, and they showed spaces that had been sealed off, hidden behind walls. The pattern from the molding suddenly made sense. It wasn't just decoration. It was a map. Tere sat in the basement darkness, the plans spread before her, and felt her architectural historian's mind fully awaken for the first time in over a decade. This building held secrets, deliberately hidden spaces. The question was why. Above her, she heard Mia and Ali moving around, settling in for another night in sleeping bags. 3 weeks until the custody hearing. 3 weeks to prove she could provide a stable home or lose everything that mattered. But as Tere studied the hidden architectural plans by flashlight, she felt something shift. Maybe survival wasn't enough. Maybe this crumbling sanatorium held answers. Not just about its past, but about her future. She carefully rolled up the plans and climbed back upstairs, her mind already cataloging what she'd need. Proper light, measuring tools, access to historical records. The building had secrets, and Tere Clarkson had spent 13 years being told she wasn't smart enough, capable enough, valuable enough. It was time to prove otherwise. Ali's laughter echoed through the empty corridors, a sound that made the sanatorium feel less haunted and more like the adventure he insisted it was. Tere listened from the former administrative office where she'd been studying the hidden architectural plans for the 3rd straight morning, trying to make sense of rooms that shouldn't exist. "Marco!" Danny's voice called out. "Polo!" Ali responded, his footsteps thundering across the lobby floor. Tere had been hesitant about letting Ali invite his new friend over, worried about what Danny's parents would think. But the boy had shown up anyway, his grandmother's permission apparently enough. According to Ali, Danny's grandmother had worked here back when people still lived here, though the boy's details were vague, filtered through 9-year-old comprehension. She returned to the plans, tracing her finger along a corridor that led to a crash. Then silence. Tere was on her feet instantly, her heart hammering. "Ali! Mom! Mom! Come quick!" Not fear in his voice. Excitement. She found them in the main lobby. Both boys crouched near the base of what had once been a grand reception desk. One of the decorative floor tiles had come loose, creating a gap in the checkerboard pattern. We were playing hide and seek and I stepped on it weird and it just... Ollie's words tumbled over each other. Look, there's something under it. Tere knelt beside them, her pulse quickening. Beneath the displaced tile, set into the subflooring, was a small brass plate. She pulled out her phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the engraving. German text, ornate script, carefully etched, and below it, a series of numbers. What's it say? Danny asked, his eyes wide. Tere's German was rusty, learned in graduate school and barely used since. But she could make out enough. Waheilung Beg and Blight Wahrheit. She translated slowly, testing each word. Where healing began, truth remains. That's creepy, Danny whispered. That's awesome, Ollie corrected. What are the numbers? Room 246, maybe? Tere studied the sequence. Or a date. 2, 4, 6. She trailed off, her mind working. The pattern from the molding. The hidden rooms on the plans. And now this brass plate with its cryptic message. This wasn't random. Someone had left deliberate clues. Boys, I need you to go play outside for a bit. Stay in the front yard where I can see you. After they'd run off, Tere sat back on her heels, staring at the brass plate. She needed help. Someone who understood the building's history, who could make sense of what she was finding. The public library, she decided. Historical records would be archived there. 2 hours later, Tere pushed through the library's heavy doors. The brass plate carefully wrapped in cloth and tucked in her bag. The building smelled of old paper and possibility. She approached the reference desk, where a librarian with silver-streaked hair looked up from her computer. I'm researching Riverside Sanatorium, Tere began. Do you have historical records? Original documents from when it was operational? We have some materials in the local history section, but Dr. Sutton would be your best resource. He's here most days working on his sanatorium research. The librarian gestured toward the reading room. That's him by the window. Dr. James Sutton was younger than Tere expected, mid-40s, wearing a worn corduroy jacket and reading glasses pushed up into his salt and pepper hair. Research materials were spread across his table in organized chaos. Photographs, documents, leather-bound journals. Dr. Sutton? Tere's voice came out softer than intended. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I was told you're researching the sanatorium? He looked up, and something in his expression shifted when he saw her. Recognition, maybe, or curiosity. You're the woman who moved into it. I heard about that. Tere felt her defenses rising. I'm sure you heard all kinds of things. I heard you're living there with your kids. That takes either courage or desperation. Maybe both. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. I'm James, and before you ask, I'm not here to judge. I'm here because that building has fascinated me for 20 years. Tere sat, studying him. His eyes were kind, intelligent. The kind of person who looked at old buildings and saw stories, not just structures. She recognized the type because she'd been that person once. My grandmother died there, James continued quietly. 1958. She was a patient in the final years before they developed effective tuberculosis treatments. I've spent 2 decades trying to understand Dr. Heinrich Vogel, the man who built it, ran it, and then disappeared without a trace in 1962. Disappeared. Tere leaned forward. Vanished the night before the building officially closed. Some say he couldn't bear to see his life's work shut down. Others suggest something darker. James pulled out a photograph. A stern-faced man in his 50s, wire-rimmed glasses, doctor's coat. He was brilliant but controversial. His treatment methods were ahead of their time, but the medical establishment rejected him. Some called him a visionary. Others called him dangerous. He was also secretive, James continued, warming to his subject. My grandmother mentioned in letters that Dr. Vogel would spend hours in parts of the building no one else could access. That he'd designed the sanatorium himself, with hidden spaces built into the architecture. Tere's breath caught. Hidden spaces? Never proven. Just rumors. Why do you ask? She pulled out the brass plate, unwrapping it carefully. "Because I found this today." James's eyes widened. He reached for it, then stopped, looking at her for permission. When she nodded, he lifted it with the reverence of someone handling historical treasure. "Where healing began, truth remains," he translated, his voice barely above a whisper. "My God, where did you find this?" "Under a floor tile in the main lobby. My son accidentally dislodged it." James was already pulling materials from his research pile: blueprints, photographs, handwritten notes. The numbers: 246. I've seen references to room 246 before in Dr. Vogel's correspondence. But according to every official building plan, that room doesn't exist. "It does on the plans I found." Tere pulled out her phone, showing him photos of the hidden architectural drawings. "These were behind a panel in the basement. They show corridors and rooms that have been sealed off." James studied the images, his expression growing more intense. "This is incredible. Do you understand what you've found? Evidence that Dr. Vogel deliberately hid parts of his own building. The question is why. Maybe he was hiding something valuable? Or dangerous? His medical experiments were controversial. Some claimed he was testing treatments the establishment wouldn't approve." James looked up from the phone. "This brass plate, it's not just a marker. It's a clue. The first in what I suspect is a series." Before Tere could respond, a voice interrupted them. "Excuse me, but I couldn't help overhearing." A man approached their table, mid-30s, expensive leather jacket, the confident smile of someone used to getting what they wanted. He extended a business card. "Marcus Webb, freelance journalist. I've been following the courthouse records about your custody case, Ms. Clarkson. Interesting reading." Tere's stomach dropped. "You have no right." "Public record." Marcus's smile didn't waver. "But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because I think there's a bigger story. A divorced woman moving into a forgotten sanatorium. A building with a mysterious past. And now, if I'm hearing correctly, hidden rooms and secret messages?" He pulled out a chair, uninvited. "That's the kind of story that could change everything. For both of us." James stood, his voice cold. "Ms. Clarkson doesn't need to speak with you." "Actually," Marcus continued, ignoring James, "I think she does, because I've been researching Dr. Heinrich Vogel too. And I know things about him that aren't in any academic papers." He looked directly at Tere. "Things about where his money came from. Things that might explain why he disappeared." Tere's mind raced. A journalist sniffing around was the last thing she needed with a custody hearing looming. But if he knew something about Vogel, about the building. "What kind of things?" she asked. Marcus's smile widened. "The kind we should discuss in private. But I'll give you this for free. Dr. Vogel wasn't just a doctor. He was a refugee who arrived in America in 1936 with enough money to build an entire hospital. In the middle of the Depression. Ask yourself where that fortune came from." He stood, leaving his card on the table. "Call me when you want answers. And Ms. Clarkson, that custody hearing in 3 weeks? Imagine walking in with proof of significant property value. Might change the judge's perspective on your circumstances." After Marcus left, Tere and James sat in silence. Finally, James spoke. "He's not wrong about the money. I've never been able to trace Vogel's funding. It appeared seemingly from nowhere." Tere looked at the brass plate, at James's research, at Marcus's card. 3 weeks until she could lose her children. And a building full of secrets that might hold answers or more problems. "The numbers," she said. 246. "We need to find where that room should be according to these plans." James nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "You want to search for it. I want to understand what I'm living in." Tere met his gaze. "And maybe, just maybe, find something that proves I haven't made the worst decision of my life." James began gathering his materials. "Then we'd better start in the sealed eastern wing. Because if I'm reading these plans correctly, that's exactly where room 246 should be." The eastern wing smelled worse than the rest of the sanatorium. Decades of water damage had created an ecosystem of mold and rot that made Tere's eyes water. She and James moved carefully across the warped floorboards, their flashlight beams cutting through the gloom. "Step where I step," James warned, testing each board before putting his full weight down. According to the structural assessment Denise Park filed with the county, this entire section is one strong wind away from collapse. Tere followed his path, her heart hammering. They'd waited until Mia and Ali were at school, not wanting to risk the children in this unstable space. The hidden plans showed room 246 should be approximately 30 feet down this corridor, behind what the official blueprints labeled as a maintenance closet. There, James pointed to a section of wall where the plaster had deteriorated badly. Through the gaps, Tere could see something that didn't belong: metalwork, dark with age but unmistakably deliberate in its construction. She moved closer, pulling away loose plaster. The metal formed a frame, heavy-gauge steel that had been concealed behind the wall. "It's a door, a vault door, disguised as a wall." James's voice carried awe and excitement. He actually did it. Vogel built secret spaces into his own hospital. Before they could investigate further, voices echoed from the main building. Multiple people, official sounding. Tere and James exchanged alarmed glances and hurried back toward the lobby. They found Denise Park standing with a man in a city inspector's uniform, both examining the building with professional disapproval. "Ms. Clarkson." Denise's tone was crisp, businesslike. "This is Robert Chun from the Building Safety Department. We've documented multiple code violations. The Eastern Wing is being officially condemned as of today." The inspector nodded, already affixing an official notice to the corridor entrance. "No one is permitted in that section. It's structurally unsound and presents immediate danger." "You can't just..." Tere started. "I can and I am." The inspector's voice brooked no argument. "If you're living here with children, I strongly suggest you vacate the premises entirely. This building shouldn't be occupied." After they left, Tere slumped against the wall. The one lead they had, the vault door in the Eastern Wing, now officially off-limits. 3 weeks until the custody hearing, and her situation had just gotten demonstrably worse. James touched her shoulder gently. "There are other locations on those plans. Other clues to follow." "With what time? I need to find work, fix this place up, prove to a judge I'm not." Her voice cracked. "I can't do this." "Yes, you can." James's conviction surprised her. "And you're not doing it alone." That evening, after another silent dinner of ramen and canned vegetables, Tere spread the hidden architectural plans across the floor of their makeshift bedroom. Mia, who'd been maintaining her sullen distance, glanced over from her sleeping bag. "What are those?" "Plans of this building, from when it was first built." "So?" Mia's tone was challenging, but Tere heard the curiosity underneath. "So they show rooms that don't exist anymore, or that were hidden deliberately." Tere hesitated, then continued. "I took photos of the decorative tiles throughout the building, the patterns. I thought maybe they meant something, but I can't figure out what." Mia was quiet for a long moment. Then, with elaborate casualness, she crawled over. "Let me see." Tere pulled up the photos on her phone. Mia scrolled through them, her artist's eye cataloging details Tere had missed. Suddenly, her daughter's posture changed. "Mom, these tiles, they're wrong." "Wrong how?" "The pattern. Most of it is standard Victorian, acanthus leaves, geometric borders, typical period stuff. But these..." Mia zoomed in on specific tiles scattered throughout the building. "These are different. See? They don't match the aesthetic at all. They're more modern, mathematical." Tere felt electricity run through her. "Show me which ones." For the next hour, mother and daughter worked together in a way they hadn't since before the divorce. Mia identified every anomalous tile in the photos. Tere marked their locations on the building plans. And slowly a pattern emerged. 6 locations. 6 tiles that didn't belong. And when connected on the plans, they formed a deliberate path through the building. "It's a map," Mia breathed. "Someone left a map in the tiles." "Dr. Vogel." Tere's mind raced. He designed the building. He must have installed these tiles deliberately, knowing future owners would assume they were original. But a map to what? Before Tere could answer, her phone rang. Richard. She almost didn't answer, but with the custody hearing looming, she couldn't afford to ignore him. Teresa, I'm trying to be reasonable. Richard's voice carried that practiced patience that meant he was furious. If you drop this ridiculous stand and agree to joint custody with the children living primarily with me, I'll withdraw the emergency motion. The children want to stay with me. The children are living in squalor because you're too proud to accept help. Bethany and I have a 5-bedroom house. Every advantage. And you're squatting in a condemned hospital. His voice hardened. The court date is in 3 weeks. I'm giving you one final chance to do the right thing. He hung up. Tere sat there, phone in hand, feeling Mia's eyes on her. He wants us to live with him, Mia said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you said no. I said no. Mia looked at the plans spread between them, at the pattern they'd uncovered together. Good. Because I think we're onto something here, and I want to see where it leads. Tere felt tears prick her eyes. Mia, don't get all emotional. I'm still mad at you for everything. But Mia's hand found Tere's, squeezing briefly. But maybe this place isn't just a dump. Maybe it's, I don't know, something. That night, Tere stood at her window watching Denise Park's office across town. Its lights still burning. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. 50,000 to vacate. Final offer. You have 48 hours. DP $50,000. Enough to rent a proper apartment, win the custody case, start over. All she had to do was walk away from the sanatorium and its secrets. Tere looked at the plans, at the tile map Mia had helped her discover, at the brass plate with its cryptic German inscription. Then she looked at her children, sleeping peacefully for the first time since they'd arrived. She deleted Denise's text without responding. Whatever this building was hiding, it was worth more than money. It was worth the truth. The first location marked by the anomalous tiles was behind a loose panel in what had once been the sanatorium's kitchen. Tere worked the panel free while James held the flashlight and Mia sketched the tile pattern in her notebook, documenting everything with an artist's precision. Got it. The panel came away, revealing a narrow compartment built into the wall cavity. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth that had protected it from decades of moisture, was a leather-bound journal. Tere lifted it carefully, her hands trembling. The leather was cracked with age, the pages yellowed but intact. She opened to the first entry, written in precise German script. January 1936. Ich bin angekommen. James translated over her shoulder. January 1936. I have arrived. They moved to better light, spreading the journal open on a relatively clean counter. The entries documented Dr. Heinrich Vogel's first years in America, his desperate flight from Nazi Germany, the family members he'd left behind, the fortune he'd managed to smuggle out. But it was an entry from March 1936 that made Tere's blood run cold. The gold I carry is both salvation and damnation, James read aloud, his voice dropping. Stolen from the thieves who stole it from us. 47 bars, melted down from jewelry, coins, family treasures, confiscated from Jewish families by the Reich. I took back what I could before I fled, knowing each bar represents someone's destroyed life. My hands are stained with this blood money, but I will use it to heal. I must believe that transforms the curse into blessing. He stole Nazi gold, Mia whispered. That's kind of badass. That's kind of complicated, Tere corrected. This isn't treasure. It's evidence of genocide. The second location, in the basement near where Tere had found the hidden plans, yielded medical records. Files documenting Vogel's experimental tuberculosis treatments. Revolutionary approaches that combine nutrition, fresh air, and compounds he'd developed himself. Notes in the margins showed the medical establishment's rejection, their accusations of quackery, their threats to shut him down. He was trying to save people, James said, reading through the documents. But because his methods weren't orthodox, they branded him dangerous. The third location was the most disturbing. A locked metal box, roughly the size of a briefcase, hidden in a sealed-off storage room. No matter what they tried, the lock wouldn't budge. "We need a locksmith," Mia suggested. "We need to know what's inside first," Tere countered. "If it's something valuable, we can't risk." A knock at the sanatorium's front door interrupted them. Tere's stomach tightened. Through the window, she recognized the silver hair and sharp eyes. Ruth Morrison stood on the threshold, leaning on a cane. She was smaller than Tere expected, more fragile. But her eyes were fierce, burning with an intensity that made Tere step back involuntarily. "You need to stop." Ruth's voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Whatever you're doing, whatever you're looking for, stop now." "Mrs. Morrison, I'm just trying to understand. You're disturbing things that should stay buried." Ruth's knuckles were white on her cane. "Dr. Vogel wanted his secrets to remain hidden. I promised him. On his deathbed, I promised." James emerged from the shadows. "Ruth, this James Sutton. My grandmother was Mary Sutton. She was a patient here." Recognition flickered across Ruth's face, followed by pain. "Mary. Yes, I remember." Her voice softened. "She died peacefully. Dr. Vogel made sure of that." "Then help us understand," James said gently. "Help us understand what he was trying to do." "He was trying to atone." Ruth's eyes filled with tears. "For surviving when so many didn't. For using money soaked in others' suffering. He built this place as penance, poured everything into healing. And when he realized the weight of it would crush him, She trailed off. He disappeared." Tere finished. "He died." Ruth's voice was flat. "By his own hand. I found him in the confession chamber, a room he'd built where no one else could find it. His final letter asked me to hide everything, the fortune, the truth, all of it, until someone came who would understand the burden, who would honor it rather than exploit it." Before anyone could respond, Tere's phone erupted with notifications. Text after text, all from people she barely knew. She opened one and felt the floor drop beneath her. Marcus Webb's article had gone viral. The headline screamed across her screen: "Divorced mom squatting in abandoned hospital. Tragedy or fraud?" The article was masterful in its cruelty. It detailed Tere's divorce, the prenuptial agreement, her choice to move her children into condemned conditions. It included photos, taken with a telephoto lens, showing Ollie playing in the debris-strewn yard, Mia's torn school clothes, the sanatorium's broken windows. The comments section was worse. Thousands of strangers weighing in on her parenting, her choices, her worth. Attention-seeking behavior. Those poor children deserve better. CPS needs to investigate immediately. Her phone rang. "Richard, have you seen it?" His voice was tight with controlled rage. "My children, on the internet, looking like homeless refugees." "Richard, I didn't. My lawyer is filing an emergency motion tomorrow. Immediate custody transfer. No judge will let them stay with you after this." He paused. "Unless you sign the agreement I sent. Full custody to me, supervised visitation for you. Sign it tonight and I'll have the article taken down." He hung up. Tere stood there, phone in hand, while the notifications continued their relentless assault. Her carefully constructed defense was crumbling. In 3 weeks, no less now, she'd face a judge who'd seen this article, these comments, this public condemnation. "Mom!" Ollie had appeared in the doorway, his face pale. "Some kids at school found the article. They're saying mean things." Tere pulled him close, then gestured for Mia to join them. Her daughter came reluctantly, but came. They stood together in the ruins of the sanatorium while the digital world tore them apart. Ruth watched from the doorway, her expression unreadable. "The custody hearing is when?" 2 weeks and 5 days, Tere said. "And you think finding Vogel's fortune will help your case?" "I think understanding what I'm living in might prove I haven't lost my mind." Ruth studied her for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out an old brass key. "The metal box. This will open it. But before I give it to you, answer me truthfully. If you find the fortune, what will you do with it? Tere met the old woman's eyes. I don't know. I haven't gotten that far. Right now, I'm just trying to survive long enough to keep my children. Wrong answer, Ruth said. But she held out the key anyway. The right answer is that you'd honor his wishes. That you'd use it as he intended, to heal, not to enrich yourself. But at least you're honest about not knowing. That's more than most would admit. That night, after the children were asleep, Tere opened Vogel's journal to a random page. The entry was dated October 1961, a year before the sanatorium closed. 246 million reasons to disappear, Vogel had written. That is what the fortune has grown to, invested carefully over 25 years. 246 million reasons to vanish before they force me to reveal where it came from. The families, 127 of them, I have documented every one, deserve their gold returned. But I am a coward. I cannot face them with what I stole back from the Reich. So I hide it here, in this building that consumed my life. Let someone worthy find it after I am gone. Let them bear the burden I could not. Tere closed the journal, her heart heavy. This wasn't a treasure hunt. It was an inheritance of guilt, passed down through decades. And she was running out of time to decide if she could bear its weight. Marcus Webb's business card sat on the makeshift table like an accusation. Tere had been staring at it for 20 minutes, James's warnings echoing in her head. He's using you. Everything he publishes makes your custody case harder. But Marcus had also written that he knew things about Vogel. Things that might help decode the journal's cryptic references. And with 2 weeks until the hearing, Tere was running out of options. She called. Marcus arrived within an hour, his laptop bag slung over his shoulder and that confident smile firmly in place. Ms. Clarkson, I hoped you'd see reason. I'm not agreeing to anything, Tere said. But you mentioned knowing about Vogel's background. I need that information. And I need exclusive rights to this story. Marcus set his laptop on the table. Here's what I'm offering. Full research support, access to archives I've already compiled, and something else, legal protection. I have contacts who can help counter your ex-husband's narrative. In exchange for what? Documentation. Photos, interviews, exclusive access to whatever you find. His eyes gleamed. This is bigger than a custody dispute, Ms. Clarkson. This is a story about Nazi gold, hidden fortunes, and a refugee doctor's secrets. It's Pulitzer material. James, who'd been standing silently in the corner, finally spoke. And Tere's privacy? Her children's safety? Protected. I may be ambitious, but I'm not cruel. Marcus pulled up files on his laptop. Look, Medivance Corporation. They hold patents derived from Vogel's tuberculosis research. Patents worth billions now. If you find anything related to his original work, they'll claim legal ownership. Tere leaned closer, reading. They can't just. They can. And they will. Marcus scrolled through more documents. Vogel's research wasn't just ahead of its time. It became the foundation for modern TB treatment. If his original notes or compounds are in this building, Medivance has lawyers ready to seize everything. The implications crashed over Tere. She wasn't just racing against Richard's custody filing. She was racing against corporate lawyers who'd been waiting decades for this. Car pulled up outside, expensive, sleek. Through the window, Tere watched Bethany emerge, looking nervously toward the sanatorium. I'll be right back, Tere said, stepping outside. Bethany stood by her car, arms wrapped around herself despite the mild weather. Her pregnancy was showing now, a small bump visible beneath her designer blouse. I shouldn't be here, Bethany said. Richard would kill me if he knew. Then why are you? Because he's having you followed. A private investigator documenting everything. Times you leave, people who visit, condition of the building. Bethany pulled a folder from her car. I copied his legal strategy. He's planning to ambush you at the hearing with evidence you've been neglecting the children. Tere took the folder, scanning its contents. Her stomach dropped. Photos of Ali playing near exposed wiring. Mia's torn clothes catalogued as evidence of insufficient care. Utility bills showing inconsistent water service. "Why are you doing this?" Tere asked quietly. Bethany's laugh was bitter. "Because I'm living your life. The one you escaped. And I'm realizing that everything Richard told me about you, that you were bitter, unstable, vengeful, it was lies." She touched her stomach. "I'm 3 months pregnant with a man who's already planning how to control me through this baby. You got out. I admire that. Bethany, if you need help." "I don't. Not yet." Bethany moved toward her car. "But I wanted you to have this. Because whatever Richard says about caring for the children, this is really about the property. He found out about potential value here. Old buildings, historical significance. He wants to make sure you can't access it." After Bethany left, Tere returned inside to find Father Gabriel had arrived, bringing Ruth Morrison with him. "The confession chamber," Ruth said without preamble. "I'll take you there. But first, answer this. If the fortune is real, if it's everything Vogel documented, what would you do?" Tere looked at the folder Bethany had given her, at Marcus and his promises, at James and his conflicted loyalty. Then at the journal entry about 127 families. "I'd try to find them," she said slowly. "The families whose gold this was. I try to make it right." Ruth's eyes softened. "Even if it means staying poor? Even if it costs you the custody case?" "Even then." Tere met her gaze. "Because my children need to learn that some things matter more than winning." Ruth nodded. "The 4th location on your tile map. It's in the church basement, what used to connect to the sanatorium through underground tunnels. The confession chamber is down there. That's where Vogel left his final testament." "When can we go?" James asked. "Tonight," Ruth said. "Before anyone else discovers what you're searching for. Before the wrong people find out." Marcus was already packing his camera equipment. "I'm coming too." "No," Tere started. "Yes, because when you find what's down there, you'll need documentation. Not for me. For the families you want to find. For proof of what Vogel really did." Marcus's expression was serious for the first time. "I may be ambitious, Ms. Clarkson, but I'm not wrong about this story needing to be told." That night, as they prepared to enter the tunnels beneath St. Mary's Church, Tere felt the weight of impossible choices. 2 weeks until she might lose her children. A fortune built on others' suffering. And secrets that had waited 60 years for someone brave enough, or desperate enough, to uncover them. "Are you ready?" Father Gabriel asked, holding an old iron key to the church basement. Tere thought of Mia and Ali sleeping upstairs, guarded by a neighbor Father Gabriel had recruited. She thought of Richard's legal strategy, Bethany's unexpected solidarity, and Ruth's 60-year burden. "No," she admitted. "But let's go anyway." The tunnel smelled of standing water and decades of neglect. Father Gabriel led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through darkness that seemed to swallow sound. Behind him came Ruth, moving slowly but determinedly. Then Tere, James, and finally Marcus, documenting everything with his camera. "The tunnels connected the church to the sanatorium," Ruth explained, her voice echoing off wet stone walls. "Patients would come for Mass without having to go outside. Dr. Vogel was Jewish, but he respected his patients' faith." They waded through ankle-deep water, the cold seeping through Tere's boots. The tunnel branched multiple times, but Ruth navigated without hesitation, following a path she'd walked 60 years ago. "Here." Ruth stopped at a section of wall that looked identical to every other section. But when Father Gabriel pressed a specific stone, the wall shifted, revealing a hidden door. The confession chamber was smaller than Tere expected. A single room, maybe 10 by 12 feet, its walls lined with metal filing cabinets. A desk sat in the center, and on it, preserved under glass, lay several documents. "This is where I found him," Ruth whispered. "October 1962. He'd taken pills. Left everything organized like he was filing his own death." Marcus's camera flashed, capturing the room. James moved to the filing cabinets, opening drawers with reverent care. Inside were files, hundreds of them, each labeled with a family name, dates, detailed inventories. "It's all here," James breathed. "Every family whose gold he recovered. 127 of them. Names, addresses as of 1936, photographs, documentation of what was taken." Tere lifted the glass protecting the documents on the desk. Vogel's suicide note was there, written in careful German. Beneath it, detailed plans for a medical research foundation he'd never established. And a map, hand-drawn, showing the exact location of the fortune's hiding place within the sanatorium. "The eastern wing," she said. "Behind the vault door we found. There's more." Ruth opened a final drawer, pulling out a metal box. Inside was a key, ornate, old-fashioned, and a letter addressed to whoever finds this. James translated aloud. "If you have found this room, you have proven yourself worthy of knowing the truth. The fortune I hide is cursed gold, stolen from the thieves who stole it from my people. I intended to use it for healing, but the weight of it destroyed me instead. My final wish: return the gold to the families or their descendants. Use the remainder to continue the healing work I failed to complete. Do not let my cowardice poison what could be redemption." The sound of footsteps in the tunnel made them all freeze. "Teresa," Richard's voice echoed. "I know you're down here. My investigator followed you." Panic seized Tere. She looked at the files, the map, the documents spread across the desk. "Hide them," Ruth hissed. "Now." But Marcus was already photographing everything, his camera clicking rapidly. "Stop." Tere reached for him. "You need proof," Marcus said. "For the families. For Vogel's legacy." Richard appeared in the doorway, a police officer behind him. His expression was triumphant. "Trespassing on church property. Endangering yourself while responsible for minor children. Officer, I want this documented." "Richard, you don't understand," Tere started. "I understand perfectly. You're so obsessed with this building. You're breaking laws and dragging our children into dangerous situations." He gestured at the flooded tunnel. "This ends now." But Mia's voice cut through the tension. "No, Dad. You end now." Tere turned to see her daughter standing in the tunnel entrance, phone in hand. "I recorded everything. You admitting you had Mom followed. You admitting this is about the property, not us." Mia's voice shook but held firm. "I'm 14, old enough to tell a judge who I want to live with. And it's not you." Richard's mask of concern finally cracked. "Mia, you don't know what you're—" "I know exactly what I'm doing." Mia moved to stand beside her mother. "Mom's not perfect, but she's honest. And right now, that matters more than your perfect house and your perfect lies." In the chaos that followed Richard's threats, the officer's confusion, Ruth's fierce defense of Tere's right to be there, Tere made her choice. She gathered the most crucial documents, hiding them in her jacket while Marcus's photographs captured everything else. The map to the fortune, the list of families, Vogel's final wishes. She would honor them, even if it cost her everything. The courtroom smelled of old wood and anxiety. Tere sat at the defendant's table, James beside her as moral support, while Richard's lawyer, a shark in a three-piece suit, shuffled papers with practiced efficiency. Judge Catherine Harrison presided, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and an expression that revealed nothing. She'd seen the viral article. Everyone had. The comments section had exploded to over 10,000, most condemning Tere as an unfit mother. "Mr. Brennan, you may begin," Judge Harrison said. Richard's lawyer stood, his opening statement a surgical strike. He painted Tere as unstable, impoverished, living in condemned conditions. He presented the private investigator's photos. Ali near exposed wiring, Mia's torn clothes, the sanatorium's crumbling facade. "Your Honor, Ms. Clarkson's choices have placed these children in immediate danger. We're not asking for punishment. We're asking for protection. Mr. Clarkson has a 5-bedroom home, stable income, and a wife prepared to provide maternal care. His pregnant wife who he's already controlling," Tere muttered. "Ms. Clarkson," Judge Harrison's voice was sharp. "You'll have your turn." Richard took the stand, performing perfectly. Concerned father, Reasonable man pushed to extremes by his ex-wife's reckless behavior. "I've tried to help her," Richard said, his voice heavy with false regret. "Offered financial support, housing assistance. But Teresa refuses to accept reality. She's obsessed with that building, dragging our children into her delusions about hidden treasures and historical secrets." The lawyer nodded sympathetically. "Mr. Clarkson, do you believe your children are in danger?" "I know they are. My daughter came home with injuries from a fight. My son plays in debris fields. The building has no consistent water service, faulty electricity." Richard looked directly at Tere. "I'm begging the court to intervene before something worse happens." It was masterful. Tere watched the judge's expression, saw doubt settling in. Then came Tere's turn. She had no lawyer, no polished presentation. Just the truth. "Your Honor, my circumstances aren't ideal, but my children are loved, fed, and safe. The sanatorium is being renovated gradually. We have electricity, running water in most areas, and I'm working to improve conditions daily." "With what income, Miss Clarkson?" Judge Harrison's question was pointed. "I'm between positions currently." "So you're unemployed, living in a building multiple inspectors have deemed unsafe, with no clear plan for improvement?" The judge's skepticism was palpable. Before Tere could respond, there was movement at the back of the courtroom. "Your Honor, I'd like to testify." Mia stood, her voice clear despite her trembling hands. Judge Harrison looked surprised. "You're the elder child? 14? "Yes, ma'am. And I want to say something about my mom." Richard's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Harrison waved him silent. "I'll allow it. Come forward, young lady." Mia walked to the witness stand with her head high. Tere's heart hammered, terrified of what her daughter might say. "My dad's lying," Mia began. "Not about the building being rough. That's true. But about why we're there and what it means." She took a breath. "My mom could have taken money from that developer lady. $50,000. She said no because she's trying to understand something important about that building. About the man who built it and what he left behind." "Ms. Clarkson," Judge Harrison addressed Mia directly, "are you telling me your mother refused financial help that would have provided better housing?" "Yes, because some things matter more than nice houses." Mia's voice strengthened. "My dad taught me that money equals worth. That's why he left my mom. She wasn't profitable anymore. But my mom's teaching me that worth means doing the right thing even when it's hard." Richard half stood. "Mia, that's not fair. You coached me to lie about her." Mia's anger finally broke through. "You told me what to say to make her look bad. You said if I helped you win, you'd buy me a car when I turned 16. She looked at the judge. "My mom's never lied to me. Not once. Even when the truth was hard." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Harrison studied Mia for a long moment. "Is there anyone else who wishes to testify?" Father Gabriel rose. "Your Honor, I'm Father Gabriel Torres from St. Mary's Church. I've known Ms. Clarkson for 3 weeks. In that time, I've witnessed a woman of profound integrity fighting impossible circumstances. She feeds her children before herself. She's researching the sanatorium's history not for profit, but to honor its legacy. These are not the actions of an unfit mother." Then, to everyone's shock, Bethany Clarkson stood. "Your Honor, I'm Richard's wife, and I need to tell the truth about what's really happening here." Richard's face went pale. "Bethany, sit down." "No." Bethany moved forward, visibly pregnant, visibly shaking. "My husband has been manipulating evidence. The photos of the children. He had his investigator wait until the worst moments, frame shots to look worse than reality. He's not doing this for the children. He's doing it because he discovered potential historical value in that property and wants to ensure Tere can't access it." She pulled papers from her purse, handing them to the judge. "These are his real legal strategy documents. They mention nothing about child welfare. Very thing about property acquisition and preventing Tere from establishing legal claims to any discoveries." Judge Harrison read the documents, her expression darkening. She looked at Richard. Mr. Clarkson, these notes suggest your primary motivation is property value, not your children's welfare. Your Honor, that's taken out of context. I don't think it is. Judge Harrison set the papers down. I'm ordering a continuance. Ms. Clarkson, you have 30 days to demonstrate improved living conditions. I want building inspection reports, proof of income or employment prospects, and documentation of the children's well-being. She looked at Richard. And Mr. Clarkson, I'm ordering you to cease all surveillance and contact through proper legal channels only. 30 days. Tere had 30 days to transform the sanatorium from condemned ruin to acceptable home, or she'd lose Mia and Ollie forever. As they left the courtroom, Mia grabbed her hand. We'll figure it out, Mom. Together. Tere pulled her daughter close, tears streaming down her face. They'd bought time, but the clock was ticking, and the impossible choice loomed larger than ever. Use Vogel's fortune to save her family, or honor his wishes and risk losing everything. 29 days. That's how long Tere had been staring at the vault door in the eastern wing. The one officially condemned. The one she wasn't supposed to access. Ruth's key hung around her neck, a constant weight of possibility and dread. Denise Park's latest offer sat on the kitchen counter. $500,000 for immediate sale. Life-changing money. Enough to rent a house, furnish it properly, walk into the follow-up hearing with proof of stability. Enough to keep her children. But Marcus's article had changed everything. The full exposé had dropped 3 days ago, carefully timed for maximum impact. The Nazi gold of Riverside Sanatorium, a refugee doctor's hidden fortune, and the modern mother fighting to uncover it. The story had gone international. Within hours, Tere's phone had exploded with calls from lawyers, treasure hunters, and news outlets. And then came the legal claims. Medivance Corporation filed first, a 200-page document asserting ownership of any medical research or compounds derived from Vogel's work. Their lawyers argued that since they held patents based on his tuberculosis treatments, they had rights to his original notes and any remaining samples. Then the descendants started appearing. Families from across America and Europe, many with documentation proving their connection to the 127 families listed in Vogel's files. Their lawyers sent polite but firm letters. The gold had been stolen from their ancestors. They wanted it back. The media circus had set up camp across the street. Satellite trucks, reporters doing stand-ups with the sanatorium as backdrop. Treasure hunters had tried to break in twice. Tere had to install new locks and security cameras she couldn't afford. Through it all, the 30-day deadline ticked down. Mom, there's more people outside, Ollie reported from the window. He'd stopped treating the sanatorium as an adventure. Now he just looked tired, smaller somehow. Mia was sketching in her notebook her way of processing stress. She'd been quieter since the hearing, the weight of her testimony settling on her shoulders. James arrived with coffee and bad news. The university is pressuring me to claim the historical artifacts. They're threatening my position if I don't advocate for academic preservation. So do it, Tere said flatly. Everyone else is making claims. Why shouldn't you? Because that's not what Vogel wanted. James set the coffee down. And it's not what you want either. I don't know what I want anymore. Tere gestured at the chaos surrounding them. 24 days until the hearing. The building inspector is coming in a week. I need to show running water throughout, safe electrical systems, structural improvements. That requires contractors, permits, money I don't have. You could have the money, Ruth said from the doorway. No one had heard her enter. The vault. You know where it is. You have the key. And if I open it? Then you face the choice Vogel couldn't make. Use cursed gold for personal gain or honor the dead. That evening, Father Gabriel called an emergency meeting at the church. He'd gathered everyone invested in the sanatorium's fate. Ruth, James, Marcus, and surprisingly, Bethany. I've been contacted by 12 families, Father Gabriel began. Descendants of people whose gold Vogel recovered. They're demanding return of their ancestral property. Legally, they may have grounds. What about the medical research? James asked. Some of that should be preserved academically. And the story needs to be told, Marcus added. Not for my career, though I won't pretend that doesn't matter, but because people need to understand what Vogel tried to do. The complexity of using blood money for healing. Bethany spoke quietly. Richard knows about the vault location. His investigator pieced it together from Marcus's article. He's planning to file a property claim, arguing that since he briefly held the deed during the divorce proceedings, he's entitled to half of anything found. Tere felt the walls closing in. Every direction led to loss, of the fortune, of her children, of Vogel's final wishes. I need to see it, she said finally. The actual fortune. I need to know if it's real before I can decide anything. They went that night, Tere, James, Ruth, and Marcus. The Eastern Wing was officially off-limits, but Tere had stopped caring about official restrictions. She had 23 days to save her family. Rules felt abstract compared to that deadline. The vault door opened smoothly despite decades of disuse. Beyond it, a climate-controlled room. Vogel had thought of everything. And inside, exactly what he'd documented. Gold bars stacked against one wall, each stamped with pre-war German marks. Medical instruments of brass and steel, some recognizing as antique surgical tools worth fortunes themselves. Filing cabinets containing research notes, decades of observations, experiments, breakthrough treatments that had been dismissed by his peers. And in the center, a single file marked Final Accounting. Inside were updated inventories, investment records showing how Vogel had carefully grown the fortune over 25 years. The final number, written in his precise hand, $246 million. My God, James whispered. Marcus's camera was already clicking, documenting everything. This changes everything. This is evidence, Tere finished, of the greatest theft in history and one man's failed attempt at redemption. She stood there, surrounded by wealth that could solve every problem in her life. Wealth that could secure her children's future, pay for college, eliminate every financial stress. All she had to do was claim it. But on the wall, Vogel had hung photographs. The 127 families. Faces staring out from another era, men, women, children who'd had everything stolen before being murdered in concentration camps. The gold had been melted down from their wedding rings, their grandmother's necklaces, their children's mezuzahs. I can't, Tere said. Can't what? Ruth asked. I can't take this. Any of it. Tere's voice was steady now, certain. James, I need your help identifying living descendants. Marcus, I need your platform to find them. Ruth, I need you to verify Vogel's documentation. And your children? Ruth's question was gentle but pointed. The custody hearing? I'll find another way. Tere looked at the fortune one last time. Vogel couldn't bear the weight of this guilt. I won't add to it by using blood money to win a custody case. That's not the lesson I want to teach Mia and Ollie. You'll lose them, James said quietly. Maybe, but they'll know their mother did the right thing. Tere turned away from the gold. We'll use only enough to make the sanatorium legally habitable. Basic repairs, nothing more. The rest gets returned to the families or used to establish Vogel's medical research foundation. Exactly as he wished. That's insane, Marcus said, but his voice carried respect. You're choosing poverty over security. I'm choosing integrity over money. There's a difference. They worked through the night, documenting everything. By dawn, they had a plan. Establish the Vogel Foundation with Ruth as advisor and James as historical consultant. Begin the process of locating the 127 families' descendants. Use a small portion, less than 1%, to bring the sanatorium up to code. It meant staying poor. It meant fighting Richard with principle instead of wealth. It meant risking everything on the belief that doing right mattered more than winning. As the sun rose over Riverside Sanatorium, Tere stood with her unlikely allies and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Pride. Not in what she owned, but in who she was becoming. 22 days, Ruth said. You've got 22 days to make this building livable on a shoestring budget. Then we'd better get started, Tere replied. Behind them, The vault door remained open, the fortune visible but untouched. A monument to one man's guilt and one woman's choice. Some treasures, Tere had learned, were worth more when you gave them away. The question now was whether a judge would agree, or whether doing the right thing would cost her the people she loved most. 6 months later, Tere stood in the restored lobby of Riverside Sanatorium, barely recognizing the space. Sunlight streamed through repaired windows, illuminating the checkerboard floor she and Mia had painstakingly restored, preserving every tile, especially the 6 anomalous ones that had started everything. The Vogel Foundation for Medical Research occupied the first floor, its offices modest but functional. Ruth sat at the reception desk, answering calls from the 89 families they'd located so far. Each conversation brought tears, gratitude, and the slow healing of generational wounds. "Mrs. Steinberg is coming next week," Ruth reported. Her grandmother was number 43 on Vogel's list. "She wants to see where the gold was hidden." James emerged from what had become the Foundation's archive, carrying yet another file. "The university backed off their claims once we agreed to loan materials for research. And Medivance, after the publicity around our mission, they're actually funding some of the TB research for developing nations." "Guilt makes generous donors," Tere observed, but she smiled. The custody case had resolved itself in unexpected ways. At the follow-up hearing, Judge Harrison had reviewed the Foundation's establishment, the family reunification work, and Tere's decision to keep only enough money for basic repairs. The judge's final ruling had been delivered with something close to admiration. "Ms. Clarkson, what you've done demonstrates extraordinary character. Temporary custody remains with you. Mr. Clarkson, your legal challenges are denied." Richard's empire had crumbled in the aftermath. Bethany had filed for divorce, the foundation of lies finally collapsing under scrutiny. He'd lost clients, reputation, and most importantly, his children's respect. "Mom!" Ollie burst through the door, his expedition headquarters sign still hanging proudly on his office door. "Danny's grandmother wants to talk to you about working at the Patient Museum." The Patient Museum, Mia's project. She'd created an art installation in the East Wing, using photographs and testimonies from families whose relatives had been treated here. The tile patterns she'd identified were preserved under glass, labeled as Dr. Vogel's Hidden Map to Redemption. Marcus had won his Pulitzer nomination, though he'd lost to a story about climate refugees. He'd stayed involved, documenting each family reunion, each returned heirloom. His friendship with Tere remained complicated. He'd exploited her pain, but he'd also helped tell a story that needed telling. Denise Park appeared in the doorway, blueprints under her arm. After witnessing Tere's choice, she'd redirected her company toward historical preservation. They were partners now, working to restore the sanatorium's exterior while maintaining its integrity. "The grant came through," Denise announced. National Historic Registry designation means federal funding for restoration. Father Gabriel arrived with lunch, a weekly tradition. The confession chamber is becoming a pilgrimage site. People want to understand Vogel's struggle. As they gathered around the table, this unlikely family built from shared purpose, Tere felt James's hand find hers. Their relationship had grown slowly, built on mutual respect and shared values. No rushing, no desperation. Just 2 people who'd found each other in the ruins. "Tour group in 10 minutes, Ruth announced. Descendants of the Goldstein family. Tere stood, smoothing her Foundation director blazer. It was secondhand, but it fit. Like her life now, not wealthy, not comfortable, but authentic. She earned enough as director to support her family modestly. They still lived in the sanatorium in a small apartment on the first floor. Mia had her own room now, walls covered with her art. Ollie's expedition headquarters remained his kingdom. They'd built something Richard could never understand. A life measured not by bank accounts but by lives changed, histories honored, wounds healed. The Goldstein descendants entered, 3 generations holding hands. The youngest, a girl about Ollie's age, clutched a photograph of her great-great-grandmother. "She died in Auschwitz," the woman explained. "But her wedding ring, the gold Dr. Vogel recovered, we're using it to fund a scholarship." turning tragedy into hope. Tere led them through the sanatorium, telling Vogel's story and her own. How a desperate woman fleeing judgment had found purpose in honoring a dead man's final wish. How her children had learned that worth isn't inherited or purchased, but chosen daily through small acts of integrity. As the tour ended, Mia appeared with her newest sketch, the sanatorium as it was and as it would be, side by side. Transformation made visible. For the newsletter, Mia explained, showing people that broken things can be made whole. That night, after everyone left, Tere walked through the quiet building. She passed the vault, now empty except for Vogel's photographs and final letter, preserved as a memorial. She passed Ruth's desk, where messages from families still seeking their history waited. She ended in the lobby, looking up at the decorative molding that had first caught her attention that desperate November night. The pattern that hadn't matched, that had suggested secrets, that had promised more than survival. Richard had been right about one thing. She'd been obsessed with this building. But not with treasure. With transformation. With proving that value existed in forgotten places, that worth could be reclaimed from ruins. The sanatorium had given her back herself. Not the woman she'd been in her marriage, but the woman she'd always had the potential to become. Researcher, advocate, mother, not defined by what she'd lost, but by what she chose to protect. Riverside Sanatorium stood solid against the night sky, no longer crumbling but restored. A monument to second chances, to hard choices, to the radical act of doing right when wrong would be easier. And inside, Tere Clarkson finally felt like she'd come home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, so you don't miss any upload from us.